The story begins with a spaceship falling rapidly from space. It crashes into a pond, and we see two humanoid figures in space suits emerge from the ship. One man drags his unconscious companion out and then falls asleep himself. After some time, when he wakes up, he sees that his unconscious companion has a terrible wound on his chest, which caused his death. Suddenly, the computer in the ship, which had been submerged in the pond, speaks. The man immediately retrieves the computer and tries to gather information about the area. He checks the locations of other spaceships, but the computer informs him that there are no other spaceships nearby. This leaves him somewhat disappointed. He then connects a wire from the computer to his eye, and all the history, languages, people, and living conditions of the planet flood into his mind. Next, he takes out his gun and begins practicing shooting. Later, in the evening, he digs a grave and buries his dead companion. His mission is now to use his gun to navigate through the dense forest and find his way out to return to his home planet. After walking for a long time, he encounters the massive corpse of a creature called a whale and realizes that this is no ordinary task for a human. He soon finds himself in a village, but the entire village is in ruins, destroyed by some catastrophic event. He senses that someone is watching him and quickly flees, but he is soon attacked by a mounted warrior who knocks him unconscious and throws his gun into a river. The man is captured and brought to a Viking village surrounded by wooden walls. There, we meet King Hrothgar, who is practicing swordplay with his daughter, Freya. During this practice, Freya tells her father that she will never marry Wulfric. Suddenly, during the sparring, Freya accidentally injures her shoulder, and the king treats her wound. Wulfric arrives soon after and informs the king that a nearby village has been attacked, and it is covered in blood, but no bodies are found. The king orders a prisoner to be captured. This man doesn't appear to be from the region, and it is suspected that he might be responsible for the destruction of the nearby village. The man is brought before the villagers, who mock and laugh at him, but then Wulfric takes him for questioning. When Wulfric asks his name, the man replies that his name is Kenan. He lies, telling them that he is from the northern region, here to hunt dragons, but no one believes him. They suspect him of being involved in the attack on the nearby village. Kenan tries to escape, but the Vikings are too powerful. Later, while imprisoned, he attempts to break free using a hot metal rod to cut his chain. At that moment, Freya arrives. Meanwhile, King Hrothgar asks Wulfric for information about Kenan, but Wulfric tells him that no useful information has been obtained yet. The king orders Wulfric to find Gunnar, the king of the destroyed village, to explain that they had no part in the attack on the village. However, Wulfric refuses because Gunnar had killed his father, and he hates him. The king tries to convince him that it was his father's negligence, not Gunnar's fault. Meanwhile, Freya is with Kenan and asks him if he was the one who attacked the nearby village. Kenan denies it. Suddenly, he breaks free from his restraints and attacks Freya and the guard. He manages to escape. Later that night, the village is attacked. The Vikings rush to the battlefield, thinking Gunnar's army is attacking, but they are shocked to find that no one is there. They soon realize that the real enemy is a terrifying creature that had already infiltrated the village and started killing people. Kenan follows the creature and calls it Morven. He reveals that he had come to hunt this dragon. Just as Kenan is about to strike the creature, the Viking soldiers capture him again and bind him to a stone. Kenan then remembers how Morven's army had attacked his home planet, and he had failed to save his people. The next day, a poor child offers Kenan a piece of bread. Meanwhile, the villagers try to figure out what monstrous creature attacked them the previous night. They bring Kenan before the king, and Kenan explains that the creature's name is Morven, and it had also attacked his home planet. He explains that Morven uses light to attract its prey before killing it. The truth is, Morven had hidden aboard Kenan's spaceship and arrived on this planet, causing destruction ever since. The villagers, angered that Kenan had brought this disaster to Earth, prepare to execute him, but the king stops them. Kenan understands that the Vikings will need to hunt Morven to protect their people, so he asks the king to let him join the hunt. The king agrees. As they prepare to leave the village, Freya punches Kenan, taking out her anger from the previous night. They set out to find Morven, but on the way, the king starts a conversation with Kenan. He tells him that if they don't stop Morven, the same destruction that befell Kenan's planet could happen here. Soon, Wulfric reports that many bodies have been found nearby and suggests splitting into smaller groups to search for Morven. However, Kenan insists that staying together is safer, but the king disagrees and orders that they split into pairs and search in different directions. While the king and Boromir, a military commander, are on their way, a severed horse's head falls from the sky in front of them. Meanwhile, other soldiers discover decayed bodies near a cave. They hear screams coming from inside the cave and rush in, where they face a savage bear. The cave is filled with piles of corpses, all villagers from the destroyed town. They believe the bear is responsible for the killing, and they attack it. Finally, Kenan kills the bear with his sword. The villagers are grateful for his bravery, and King Hrothgar releases him from captivity. That evening, the entire village celebrates the bear's death. Kenan, now wearing common village clothes, joins in the celebration, and the villagers warmly welcome him. The king shares a meal with him. Then the same poor child who had given Kenan bread approaches him, and Kenan, wanting to repay the favor, gives the boy his sword as a gift. The boy introduces himself as Eric, explaining that his parents died in a battle, and now the villagers care for him. After a while, Wulfric challenges Kenan to a game. Soldiers sit with shields on their heads, and the contestants must walk across them and reach the end without falling. Kenan stumbles several times and falls onto Boromir, but Wulfric doesn't mock him. Instead, he helps him up. After the celebration, Kenan steps outside, and Freya approaches him. She thanks him for helping her father on the hunting mission in the forest. Kenan, however, explains that the real threat is not the bear, but Morwen, the creature that kills by taking lives. He warns that it could return at any time. Suddenly, Gunnar's army attacks the village. A fierce battle breaks out, with Kenan and Freya fighting bravely, killing many enemies. Gunnar corners the king, about to kill him, but Kenan intervenes and saves the king. Just as Kenan and Gunnar are about to engage in a brutal fight, Gunnar's soldiers pull him away, knowing that he would not be able to defeat Kenan. Before leaving, Gunnar curses the king, blaming him for the destruction of his own village. That night, one of the soldiers who had been attacked by Morwen woke up to find himself surrounded by bodies. But soon after, Morwen appeared and killed him mercilessly after the battle ended. Freya told Kenan everything about Gunnar. Several years ago, when Wulfric's father was the king, he gathered all the surrounding villages to plan an attack on France. However, at the last moment, Gunnar did not show up, and as a result, he was considered a traitor. Since then, a feud began between the two villages. Later, we see Gunnar and his army setting up camp in the forest. It was revealed that they had come to attack Wulfric and take revenge for what happened years ago. However, when one of the soldiers went a little further to relieve himself, suddenly Morwen appeared from the pond and brutally killed him. Gunnar and his army thought that Wulfric was behind the attack. In a short time, Morwen killed several soldiers, and in the end, only Gunnar was left standing. He decided to face Morwen without caring about his life. At the same time, we see that some of Gunnar's men, who had fled the battle, arrived at another village and begged for the gates to be opened to save their lives. When Wulfric saw Gunnar's men back in the village, he thought it was a trap, so he ordered his soldiers to attack. However, soon after, Gunnar arrived, having barely escaped from Morwen. He had come to ask for help from the nearby village, but Wulfric's soldiers fired arrows and killed all of Gunnar's men. In the end, only Gunnar was alive, and Kenan managed to stop the soldiers and open the village gates so that Gunnar could enter. As soon as Gunnar entered, Wulfric was ready to kill him. But just then, everyone's attention was drawn to a blue light glowing in the forest. The light seemed to be devouring a man, and soon the blue light turned red, revealing Morwen's true and terrifying form. Morwen fled into the forest. Now, everyone understood that the deadly attacks were the work of Morwen, not a bear. Later, in the Great Hall, the king gathered everyone, where Gunnar and Wulfric were still standing against each other. Gunnar explained that when he struck Morwen with his sword, it felt as if he was hitting a stone wall. Kenan then suggested that trying to kill Morwen in an open field would be better. He explained that they would need to set a trap to catch him. However, Wulfric was not willing to accept this. He said that Kenan was not from their land and, therefore, his advice should not be followed. Kenan, angered, retorted that Wulfric's judgments were always wrong. He reminded him that first he had blamed the bear for the attack, then he let Gunnar's entire army be slaughtered. This led to a brief fight between the two, but the king intervened. He then agreed to follow Kenan's suggestion and prepare to catch Morwen using a trap. The next day, the villagers began to dig a pit outside the village. They dug a deep hole and covered it so that it looked like an ordinary hut. Then they placed poles in the pit and filled it with oil. The plan was to trap Morwen in the pit and burn him alive. Once the preparations were complete, the king offered Kenan a job, making him a part of their village. Meanwhile, Kenan and Freya sat in her hut, sipping soup. When Kenan revealed the truth about his life, he explained that the people of his planet wanted to rule the entire universe. When they reached Morwen's planet, they launched devastating bomb attacks, wiping out his entire species. Kenan had been part of that deadly mission, and in return, his family was promised a safe place to live. After conquering Morwen's planet, Kenan was sent on another mission. He learned that one Morwen had survived and hidden in the vents of Kenan's spaceship. This Morwen had come to Earth with Kenan and was now terrorizing the people. Kenan felt responsible for the destruction caused by Morwen, but Freya reassured him that it was not his fault. She then gave him her family's sword so that he could defeat Morwen and protect the people of Earth. That night, they, along with Gunnar, set their trap for Morwen. The soldiers opened the village gates, and Wulfric and Kenan stood outside, waiting for Morwen to appear. They could not see clearly in the dark, so Kenan threw a burning torch into the forest. At that moment, they saw Morwen standing right in front of them. Suddenly, a priest appeared and told Morwen to leave in the name of God. However, Morwen instantly decapitated him with a single blow. Seeing this, Wulfric and Kenan ran to lure Morwen into the trap. Their plan worked, and Morwen fell into the pit. But unfortunately, Wulfric's foot slipped, and he too fell into the pit. Just as the archers were about to fire a flaming arrow to ignite the pit, Kenan managed to pull Wulfric out of a small opening. At that moment, the pit exploded in a massive fire, surprising everyone. Then, from behind the women's group, a new Morwen emerged. It seemed to be the child of the large Morwen. Upon seeing this, panic spread, but Freya decided to confront it alone. Soon, her father came to help her, but Morwen quickly defeated him. At the same time, the first Morwen, who had been burned in the pit, jumped out of the fire and began attacking the people. Wulfric and Kenan tried to fight him off, but neither of them could stand up to Morwen. Gunnar came to their aid, but Morwen used his tail to decapitate him in one blow before running off toward the water. At that moment, Eric informed Kenan that another Morwen was fighting Freya alone. Kenan immediately ran to help, but when he arrived, he saw Freya crying over her father's lifeless body. Kenan comforted her, and the next day, the villagers began fleeing in fear of Morwen. Eric told Kenan that he wanted to stay in the village, but Kenan advised him to leave with the others. He promised Eric that they would meet again. Then Kenan went to see Wulfric, who was now the new king after the death of his father. However, Wulfric was disheartened by the destruction around him. Kenan encouraged him and said that together they would defeat Morwen and bring peace back to the village. Kenan then entrusted Boromir with the task of making new weapons. After that, Kenan, Freya, and Wulfric went to the pond where Kenan's spaceship had crashed. They went into the water and found the necessary item. During this, Kenan saw a Morwen in the pond and quickly emerged. However, the boat they had arrived in was broken, and Wulfric was unconscious, while Freya had completely disappeared. Meanwhile, Boromir worked on making a new spear. Soon, Kenan arrived and took the spear, heading down into a hidden tunnel beneath the ground. He was followed by his companions. On the other side, Freya woke up in a cave, surrounded by bodies. She tried to escape, but Morwen appeared before her. Just then, Kenan and his group arrived and heard Morwen coming toward them. Morwen attacked them, and they fought fiercely. They managed to kill one smaller Morwen, but during the struggle, Boromir was killed. Meanwhile, Freya, who had recovered, encountered a wounded Morwen. Though he couldn't see, he could hear her and began searching for her. Kenan and Wulfric called out to her from the other side of a wall, and when Morwen heard their voices, he attacked their location. Freya jumped to save herself just as a hole opened up in the wall. The gap was small, so Kenan gave Freya his spear, and she used it to strike Morwen, finally killing him. Now, Freya and Kenan were together again, but they could only look at the pile of bodies in the cave, their blood running cold. Then they heard Morwen approaching once again. They fled, and when Morwen reached the cave, he saw that his son was dead. He was enraged and became even more determined to kill Kenan and his friend. Meanwhile, Kenan and Freya reached the top of a mountain where they tried to escape, but the climb was difficult and they kept slipping. Freya tried to descend but lost her footing. Just in time, Kenan grabbed her hand and saved her. Morwen arrived and attacked Wulfric, lifting him and throwing him toward Kenan. Morwen then retreated into the cave. Kenan followed him, cutting off one of his legs. Morwen turned and attacked Kenan from behind, but Freya intervened, attacking Morwen and allowing Kenan to strike him down. Kenan and Freya managed to defeat Morwen, and Wulfric, badly injured, asked if Morwen was truly dead. When they confirmed this, Wulfric gave Kenan his locket, signaling that Kenan would be the next king. Kenan then delivered the news of Morwen's defeat to the villagers and kissed Freya. Kenan married Freya, becoming the new king of the village, and adopted Eric. He decided to stay on Earth permanently with his new family.